Live pictures right now out of Georgia. Republicans Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene making their next tour stop in Dalton, which is part of Greene's district, actually. And Gaetz, who has repeatedly done Donald Trump's bidding and pushed the big lie over and over, saying the GOP is 100% the party of Trump.
This is Donald Trump's party, and I'm a Donald Trump Republican. It's our ideas, America first, that fills the stadiums and the halls and the ballrooms and the prairies all across this great land. We're not going back to the days of the Bushes and the McCains and the Romneys. Our way, America first, is the way forward for America.
Donnie, that is what we're hearing from the stage. What are you hearing from the people in the audience?
Hey guys, yeah, you know, when we were last here, actually, it was just 2 days before the insurrection. Donald Trump had his last central rally here as president. And back then, on January 4th, people were unable to accept that Trump had lost the election. And it's very much the same message today. Have a listen. You'd agree the 2020 elections, it's over.
We're in new territory. Unless I'm mistaken, this is the first forensic audit of a presidential election. Forensic. So we don't know.
Do you genuinely think there's a possibility that the election
that
could still be
Trump could
overturned?
obtain the electoral slate of Arizona? Yes, I think that's a possibility. And if that happens, could it happen to Georgia? Possibly.
You're still clinging on to this belief, false belief, that the election could be overturned. You're clinging on to that, are you?
Clinging to it? I'm hopeful.
Would it not be better for Republican politicians, for Republican supporters, to move on and to look forward, even to look forward and ahead to Trump running in 2024, instead of keep on looking backward?
No, because we think this was too great of a crime, and we just can't let it go. We're not going to let it go.
So, Kate, you can hear there that the sham audit in Arizona is really giving hope, and, you know, it's giving people hope because Trump has been out there with messages, giving interviews to MAGA media, saying that Arizona might be the first domino to fall in overturning the election, which, of course, is false. Gaetz is speaking right now. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who really is the main attraction here tonight in her district, is due to speak shortly. I asked some folks here today about those terrible remarks she made about the Holocaust during the week, and rather than being offended by them or worried about them, people here were praising those remarks. They said that it's good that Greene speaks her mind and that she makes comments like this. Kate?
Even though they make absolutely no sense and they belittle the killing of 6 million Jews. Okay. Thank you so much, Donnie. Great reporting, as always. Up front with me now, Chief Strategist for the Bush-Cheney 2004 presidential campaign, Matthew Dowd, and former Republican Governor of Ohio, John Kasich. It's good to see you both. Thanks for being here. Governor, you just heard one of the men that Donnie spoke to at this rally, one of the people who were there to see Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene. I recall very clearly that Gaetz and Greene have targeted you, actually, in these rallies as well. What do you say to what you heard tonight?
Thank you for doing that. I mean, I can't hardly believe that. Kate, it's like fantasy land. And I feel sorry for this gentleman that thinks that somehow this election is going to be overturned. I mean, I don't know how his head gets filled with this. Rather than be, kind of critical and angry, I'm sort of feeling sorry, and I'm worried about our country, because when you look at the numbers, it's amazing how many Republicans actually think it was not a legitimate election. And so how does this carry on? What are the implications for the future? Are we going to have one election after another that's going to be contested, where there'll be no legitimacy? Because when you don't have legitimacy in the results of an election, it's pretty hard to sustain the system that we have. I'm very hopeful we're going to recover from this, but we've been waiting a long time. So it's pretty amazing. And you've got Matthew Dowd, a very smart guy on this. I'll bet he's just stunned at what he's been seeing. It's just not the party that I grew up with or the party that we know. And attacking Romney and Bush and Kasich, and it's really something. So it'll change. This is just this moment in time, and the winds of change will come.
But Matthew, jump in. I mean, every time we've talked, I mean, we talk about the unicorns that are the Republican Party, or the Republican Party that you once knew, right? And the winds of change, it might be a long time before it does, because this is the Republican base that Gaetz and Greene speak for, and feed off of, and apparently the Republican Party is depending on now.
Well, it's great to be on with the governor. I've always been a big fan. I mean, this is the Republican Party today, and that's what I think people have to face, that reality. The only change that has happened over the course of the last 5 years is it's gotten worse. I mean, Donald Trump has an 82% favorability rating among the Republican base in this country. Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz are more popular than Mitt Romney and Liz Cheney in the Republican Party today. Anybody that's sane in the Republican Party today, that admits to a common set of facts, that wants to sort of investigate what happened on January 6th and all that, is basically almost impossible to win in a primary in this country. So to me, I agree that we're at a crucial point in our democracy, probably as crucial as we were at in 1860 or 1861 in what we have, because we have one of the two major legacy parties that is occupied by conspiracy theorists, charlatans, and people that push for huge conflicts in our country. To me, the only path forward is to a decimating losses to be suffered by the Republican Party in a series of elections. Decimating losses. That's the only way I think politically we'll move through this. The Republicans have to suffer a series of devastating losses in 2022 and 2024, and maybe then we'll be able to renew this thing to a place that's rational. But right now, the Republican Party is Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Wow, Matthew, it really is something to hear you put it in those terms. I mean, we've got another Republican, I know you both respect, who's speaking out tonight. Paul Ryan is back out speaking tonight. The former speaker, former VP nominee, he's going to be making a speech, and he's going to, according to excerpts, he's going to speak out against the big lie. He's going to take on Donald Trump tonight. I want to read for you one of the things that he is expected to say. He's expected to say, once again, we conservatives find ourselves at a crossroads. And here's one reality we have to face. If the conservative cause depends on the populist appeal of one personality or on second-rate imitations, then we're not going anywhere. Voters looking for Republican leaders want to see independence and mettle. Governor, but does Paul Ryan still know what conservatives want? I mean, we just listen to what Matthew said.
Well, we know what conservatives want. I mean, the traditional Republican Party, the DNA, is low taxes and limited government. And so the problem with the Biden administration, they're piling all this new government on top of government that currently doesn't work very well. So the Republican Party needs to focus on those things that are going to provide for economic growth, and that's limiting the size and the scope of government. The Republican Party has to focus on things like the cost of pharmaceuticals. This is what people are talking about all over the place. The party has to come up with alternatives to immigration. We ought to really have a plan for the dreamers, so these kids that came here through no fault of their own has a place to live in America. I mean, it's a party of hope, opportunity, expansion, and growth. And now when I hear them talk about what is America first, I don't even know what that means. That's just rhetoric without any plan.
It just makes them feel good.
Now,
there's nothing behind it. I mean, it just makes them feel good. It's just a rallying cry.
Right. But here's the problem. The problem is the Republicans are likely, by historical standards, to win the House, to win one of these houses of Congress. And then we have to see where we are, because I hope they don't think that legitimizes them. Because we're almost like a government in Britain, you know, where we're breaking down.
But
on
it's going to make
parties.
them feel that way, Governor. I mean, it's going to make them
I don't
a win
know.
is a win. I mean, at the end of the day.
Here's the only thing I know. The less that Washington gets done, the more is for us to do where we live. And as I've told you many times before, change in America comes from the bottom up.
So
we have to seize power in our communities and begin to drive things that way.
And Matthew, real quick, as if on cue, Matt Gaetz has now just taken a shot at Paul Ryan, as we're just talking about. Paul Ryan is going to speak out tonight. I want to hear what you have to say, Matthew, but let's listen to Matt Gaetz real quick.
As we gather tonight, Paul Ryan is giving a speech in California, taking advice on party building from Paul Ryan would be like taking advice on how to interact with your in-laws from Meghan Markle.
He's saying Paul Ryan as if it's like synonymous with like the devil incarnate, Matthew.
Well, I don't think Matt Gaetz should be given any advice, including on dating advice. So I would leave him out of advice giving of this. To me, the problem with Paul Ryan is living in a land that no longer exists. There's not a Reagan Republican Party that exists. If Reagan were alive today and went down to that rally, Reagan would be booed. John Kasich would be booed at that rally. Mitt Romney would be booed at that rally. Every single principled conservative who stood up would be booed at that rally. And to me, Paul Ryan, the first order of business of Paul Ryan, who sits on the board of Fox News, should be to criticize what Fox has done. Because if anybody has propped up Donald Trump over the course of the last 5 years and continues to do, it's Fox News. And the one main entity that has propagated the big lie that led to January 6th is Fox News.